We have looked at evidence-based practices and the structure and contents of the fidelity scale for permanent supportive housing. You should have a good feel for how a fidelity scale is constructed and some idea how it is used. But what about the process of conducting a fidelity assessment? What does it entail from a practical, organizational point of view? What is expected of a program when a formal fidelity assessment is conducted? Let's start by reminding ourselves why we want to undergo an evidence-based practice fidelity assessment in the first place. Fidelity assessments are one measure of the quality of a program. They may be used by quality assurance departments to help establish quality standards and desired performance benchmarks, and to evaluate service program for compliance to those quality standards. They are also helpful for program managers and administrators for the process of program design and development. For example, if you are establishing a new PSH program, the PSH Fidelity Assessment provides some excellent guidelines for how to set it up. If you are wanting to shift to a more traditional residential program toward a supportive housing approach, a PSH Fidelity Assessment can give you a good picture of where to start. If you are presently operating a PSH program, you may want to know your program's strengths and weaknesses so you can target areas for development. When a service network contracts with an agency to provide PSH services, they want to make sure the services provided are in fact PSH. If you're buying chocolate cake, you don't want to be served pancakes. Further, as we discussed, there are broader legal and policy considerations that require agencies to ensure that people with disabilities live in the most integrated setting. If your PSH program is not attaining the outcomes you or your funder think it should, a fidelity assessment may help pinpoint where your approach deviates from the research-based model and its associated outcomes. The closer you are to a high-fidelity model, the more likely you are to attain the positive outcomes associated with the model. Finally, many programs, especially successful programs, are at risk for what is known as model drift. That is, they may start out strong, but then make small compromises and changes over time that results in the program drifting further and further away from the principles and practices a high-fidelity EBP service provides. A fidelity assessment can help you with all of these concerns. EBP fidelity assessments may be conducted internally by a program or its parent organization, or they may be conducted by an entity external to the program, such as a funder or quality assurance department of a contracting authority. Is one approach better than the other? No, each has some strengths and limitations. Internal assessment requires that programs take a hard look at what they are doing and how they are doing it. This self-assessment process stimulates reflection and discussion within the program. It offers programs an opportunity to monitor their own quality over time, remedy problem areas, and identify areas for growth. Areas for staff development may also become apparent and thereby help guide the use of training resources. Internal assessment also helps programs see what they're doing really well and to celebrate successes and staff achievements. Such assessments also provide the program with data on the program that can be used for reports, as well as for new bids and proposals. A challenge of internal assessment is that the programs tend to see themselves in a very bright and positive light. Sometimes this is an accurate perception, but other times it's not. External assessment offers an objective counterbalance to internal assessments. When a fidelity assessment is formally undertaken by an external entity, it is typically conducted in a standardized manner, with the same process used with different agencies and over time. This consistency results in comparable information and helps you know how your program is doing in comparison to others. Multi-agency or cross-program assessment also creates a profile of the system or network. This gives big-picture information on the system's strengths and areas for development in the implementation of EBP services. External assessments may also be used as a part of a contract compliance or quality assurance evaluation. As you saw during our discussion of the PSH Fidelity Scale, A number of data sources are required to make determinations about a program's score on the dimensions and indicators. We mentioned these earlier, but let's take a closer look at them. Observations and informal conversations. These are typically informal and consist of the things you or an evaluator would see or hear or overhear in the course of everyday practice and exchanges. This can include structured observation opportunities such as listening in on meetings, but also encompasses less obvious forms of communication such as what's posted on walls, conversations in hallways, tone and content of discussions, attitudes of staff, and the general milieu. Interviews. Multiple individuals are interviewed to gather information on specific fidelity assessment dimensions. One individual may be able to supply information on some dimensions, and others may know about other dimensions. These key informants typically include organizational leadership, EBP program management and staff, people using the EBP services, and others. Client chart reviews. The evaluation team will make a random election of charts of people served by the program and organization. These are not to be pre-prepared or vetted in advance for the evaluation. The chart selection may include individuals receiving the EBP services, in our case, in a PSH program, as well as people who have been referred but not yet enrolled in the program. Policy documents and written materials. Policy documents and written materials may include organizational policies and informational materials, such as program brochures and promotional materials. It also includes clinical tools and forms used for assessment and service planning and other materials used to inform and support individual or practitioner decision-making in practice. Utilization and demographic data. The score some PSH fidelity dimensions are based on is demographic information from the organization. To generate a score, the organization should have on hand information about the total number of served by the organization and the EBP program. For PSH fidelity assessments, it is helpful to have detailed information on current housing status of those served by the program, as well as those eligible, referred, enrolled, or dismissed. Logs and reports. This may include data on the frequency of staff supervision and team meetings. If your organization has undergone previous organizational assessments or program fidelity reviews, having copies of those reports on hand can also be helpful. This graphic shows the basic process of an EBP fidelity assessment. Again, this course is designed to familiarize you with an EBP fidelity scale and the process of a fidelity assessment, not fully prepare you to conduct one. You can get more information on conducting a PSH fidelity assessment in SAMHSA's EBP Toolkit, available at the SAMHSA store, or download the Toolkit chapter Evaluating Your Program from the resources for this course. There are 5 major steps in a fidelity assessment: scheduling, preparing, engaging, discussing results, and determining next steps. Scheduling entails identifying a lead program person to coordinate with an evaluator or evaluation team. Responsibilities of the lead may include coordinating with agency quality assurance staff or committees, setting dates and times for the assessment, and creating a master schedule. Preparing involves familiarizing yourself with the elements of the fidelity scale to be used, identifying who the informants or interviewees will be and scheduling them, and gathering or preparing documents and other needed information and materials. You want to know what will be asked and the best sources of information to answer questions, so your program is evaluated as fairly and accurately as possible. This is not a secret process with trick questions. You will find example questions in the PSH Toolkit chapter on evaluating your program. Engaging is the process of actively participating in interviews with evaluators, providing requested or needed materials, and being available for any follow-up request from evaluators. After the on-site work is completed, evaluators will prepare a report with their findings. Typically, a preliminary report is provided to program leadership for review and discussion with the evaluators. The findings report should also be discussed with agency leadership, program staff, and any agency quality assessment team or committee. Once you have reviewed and discussed the findings, you need to think about what to do with the information you have learned and identify your next steps. First, you want to celebrate strengths and successes. You want to do more of what you're doing well. This is also an opportunity to acknowledge the hard work of staff in achieving these successes. You also want to generate strategies to address any weak spots and then prioritize concrete action steps to remedy them. In some cases, you may want or be asked to prepare a response report. This would document your acknowledgement of the findings and typically present your plan for any required remediation of problem areas. It can sometimes be difficult to determine exactly who is in the program at any point in time, and therefore who should be included in the fidelity assessment process. Are people who have been referred but not yet accepted included? What about people who have dropped out? There needs to be an upfront agreement between the program and evaluation team about clear start and end dates for the period under review. DWMHA has determined that PSH fidelity assessments will include all persons referred, enrolled, in transit, in housing, or who have relocated since any previous fidelity review or an agreed-upon start date. People who have been disenrolled from PSH could also be included in the evaluation, again, agreed in advance with evaluators. Of course, some elements of the scale may not be applicable for all individuals, such as affordability and rights of tenancy for persons who have not yet moved. The evaluation sample size or number of clients included in the evaluation is relative to the program size. For assessments to have meaning, there need to be enough people in the program to provide sufficient data for analysis. Again, the number of tenants to be evaluated during a PSH fidelity assessment should be clarified up front with the evaluators and funder. Typically, a cutoff point for the period of review is 30 days prior to the date of the scheduled fidelity assessment. This allows programs ample time to compile needed materials and address any known documentation deficits. Remember the kinds of tenant data required to score the dimension on affordability and housing quality standards? PSH programs have found that creating a tenant data tracking chart, such as this example, is helpful for both fidelity assessments and internal program management. The chart functions as a detailed roster of program clientele and is an ideal way to organize, track, and present data about individual tenants. Note the information recorded: type of housing, address, total rent, amount of tenant-paid rent and utilities, tenant income, whether housing quality inspection was performed, number of people sharing a unit, rights of tenancy, whose name is on the lease, and information about any relocations. While this may take some time to create initially, once created, it is easy to keep updated with any new tenant or enrollee information and residency or status changes. Maintaining such a chart regularly provides an excellent internal monitoring tool and saves programs considerable time when preparing for a PSH fidelity assessment. Part of preparing for a fidelity assessment is gathering key documents to have on hand for reference or review during a fidelity assessment. These include program descriptions, policies, and procedures. It is good to have available statements of eligibility criteria and examples of intake forms or interview protocols, as well as discharge procedures. Documentation of any housing inspections, occupancy agreements, or leases are good to have available. Program information such as job descriptions, organizational charts, and team meeting notes are helpful to document staff responsibilities and team activity. If electronic documents are to be used, arrangements for access to information should be made in advance. Part of a PSH fidelity assessment is client chart review. Charts may be either traditional paper files or electronic, but they need to include annual service reports, periodic adjustments, modified plans, program notes, budgets, leases, and so forth. All tenant charts must include the most recent IPOS and other planning materials. Remember, these charts are randomly selected by an evaluation team and are not pre-selected and vetted by the program. Document review is only one element of the data collection process in a fidelity assessment. Interviews with key informants are also important. Key informants typically include program administrators, supervisors, case managers, clinicians, and direct services staff. PSH fidelity assessments always include interviews with a sample of enrollees or tenants. All of these interviews are discussed in advance with the lead evaluator, scheduled, and included in a master schedule for the evaluation. Angela is a quality assurance specialist who has been trained to conduct PSH fidelity assessments. We asked her for some insights about how tenant interviews are conducted for these assessments. She replied, "Any tenant enrolled in the PSH program, whether in transition or in housing, may be interviewed as part of a fidelity assessment. In addition to those who are settled into housing, when we can, it is helpful to talk to people who are very new to the program and those who may have relocated or moved on. We talk to tenants who are willing to talk to us. Some are very excited to talk about their experience. Others are shy. No one is forced to talk to us. When a tenant is shy, they can ask for someone familiar to them, such as a housing specialist or peer support staff, to come along for introductions and provide reassurance. However, preferably the staff person is not present in the room when the interview is conducted with the tenant. This gives people the privacy to say what's on their mind." Rarely does any program achieve a perfect score on a fidelity assessment. EBP fidelity scales are based on an ideal, while programs operate in the real world. A fidelity assessment offers communities and providers a way to consider the dimensions of fidelity in light of real-world considerations. You may hit bullseye on some dimensions, but not on others. You can have a program that reflects fidelity to practice as long as it meets a minimum threshold score, which may be contractually established by a funder or authority. It is this minimum threshold that draws the line between our metaphorical chocolate cake and pancakes. Remember, too, that fidelity scales look at multiple dimensions, and a low score on one dimension does not necessarily impact the overall fidelity assessment. For example, an agency may receive a low score on the affordability indicator because of the local housing market, but have high enough scores on other dimensions to meet their contracted minimum threshold for fidelity. An EBP fidelity assessment is not a test, and a high score is not really the point. It is a guide for helping agencies and networks develop high-quality, high-fidelity, and effective EBP services. The scores for the 7 dimensions of the PSH fidelity scale and their indicators form a profile of a program. They paint a picture of the program's strengths and challenges. When a program scores high on a fidelity dimension or indicator, it is worthy of acknowledgement. High fidelity on any dimension does not occur without considerable effort and hard work. It is a cause for some celebration and recognition of the work that went into the success. When a program scores low on a dimension or indicator, it is wise to look into the why. Why did we score low on this indicator? Is this a recurring issue or the result of something that happened recently, such as staff changes? What can we do about this score? Is this something we can fix internally? What will it take? How can we use this information to improve our program and bring us closer to fidelity? Programs may also want to ask themselves, do we even want to score high on this indicator? Some programs make a conscious choice to operate in a particular way and may be fine operating outside fidelity on some aspect of their service. For example, an agency may need or want to operate a building with 100% tenants with disabilities or have leases with treatment stipulations. Such programmatic or policy decisions will be picked up by the PSH fidelity scale and reflected in the assessment's results. It is up to the program, the organization, and their funders or authorities to set the bar for how much deviation from high-fidelity operation can be tolerated under any contractual obligations. Jackie is a behavioral health agency housing director. She and her programs have undergone 4 PSH fidelity assessments. We asked her for some insights based on her experience. She told us, "I was nervous the first time and thought I'd lose my job if we didn't get a perfect score. Then I realized it wasn't the score that counted most, but what I did with the information I learned about my programs. We did a self-assessment first and thought we were pretty hot. But an outsider looking in sees things very differently. The objective view was helpful, though a bit painful. We're now better than ever. We have some housing services that will never be high-fidelity PSH. That's okay. Some people want and need other kinds of living situations, but it's not okay to try to pass them off as PSH. We know we'll take a hit on some dimensions when a program is not intended to be a high-fidelity PSH. It is important to document these exceptions. I was embarrassed when we lost some people. They moved and we didn't know where. Now we do a better job engaging and following up. We don't want any more PSH tenants homeless because we forgot about them. Before you take the final quiz for this course, let's review some of the key points from this section. EBP fidelity assessments help programs meet legal and contractual obligations for provision of an EBP service. As importantly, they are tools for program design, development, and assuring program quality. When combined with outcome measures, process measures such as fidelity assessments capture a solid picture of the program, its operations, and its outcomes. Higher fidelity programs are more likely to demonstrate the positive outcomes found in research. Both internal and external EBP fidelity assessments are beneficial for program development and improvement. External assessments provide objective benchmarks and standardized processes resulting in comparable information. The EBP fidelity assessment process is straightforward and entails scheduling, preparing, engaging, discussing results, and prioritizing next steps. Assessment period time frames, key informants, and the numbers of interviewees are usually negotiated between the evaluator, the agency, and any oversight authority involved. Multiple sources of information are used in an EBP fidelity assessment. Evaluators should let programs know what will be required in advance. Programs should compile, organize, and make information available as requested. Data charts are helpful for program management purposes as well as EBP fidelity assessments. Documents requested often include program descriptions, organizational charts, intake forms, policies and procedures, housing inspection documents, example leases or occupancy agreements, discharge protocols, tenant charts or notes, IPOS, either paper or electronic records, job descriptions, and team meeting notes. The summary report provides a profile of how the program performed on each of the dimensions and indicators. Programs are rarely, if ever, perfect. What is important is to meet a minimum threshold of fidelity that is often contractually specified. The report also provides programs valuable information about program performance, strength, and areas for development. Programs not only survive EBP fidelity assessments, but can thrive and become stronger through the process. For more information on permanent supportive housing or any of the information that you've seen in this course, or for more specifics on some of the resources that are attached to this course, please contact the number or email address provided on this slide. You may also be interested in other VCE e-learning courses on permanent supportive housing for yourself and your staff. Thank you for participating. Have a great day.